Why 2020's women-dominated superhero movies are movies we need to see by Blair Davis. Female directors have been shut out of the 2020 Oscars. Only 5 women have ever been nominated for Best Director, and superhero movies remain rare among Oscar nominees. But with Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn now in theaters, comic book movies have reached a turning point. This is the year in which women take control, both in starring roles and behind the camera. Hollywood has been rightly criticized in recent years for a lack of female directors, but many of the biggest films this year come from female directors. This year's conversation about comic book movies will be all about women and what they bring to and beyond the screen. We've reached a point in which comic book movies have become so profitable that Hollywood has finally acknowledged there's room for big budget films about superheroes who aren't white men. Unlike female-centered titles from past decades like Tank Girl or Elektra, there isn't the risk of this year's films getting lost in a sea of bigger films. Female-centered films make up 5 out of the 8 comic book movies being released this year. The lineup is impressive, with Hollywood reserving some of their top summer weekends for female-led franchises. Marvel and DC will each see 2 films this year, all of them with female directors and stars. Kathy Yon's Birds of Prey stars Margot Robbie as the villain. In May, Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow finally gets her own solo film from director Kate Shortland. In June, Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman 1984 marks the director's second time working with Gal Gadot as Diana Prince. In November, Chloe Zhang's Eternal stars Angelina Jolie and Gemma Chan as 2 of Marvel's oldest immortal heroes. On top of it all, we'll get the X-Men spinoff The New Mutants in April, starring Game of Thrones' Maisie Williams. Sure, there are also a few films starring male heroes this year, but most are about characters that average moviegoers have never heard of. Ask your friends who don't read comic books if they know Bloodshot or Morbius the Living Vampire, and be prepared for a blank stare. Ultimately, the importance of this turn towards women in comic books is not limited to what happens in Hollywood. Recent polls suggest that women might be the key group of voters who decide the 2020 election. The ways that women are represented in many of Hollywood's top films this year as heroes who wield immense power, whose voices matter, and who are capable of changing the world could resonate with female voters. Media representations can have lasting consequences for audience, especially when you see your own identity reflected back at you in new and inspirational ways. Before we celebrate too much too soon, despite how many movie tickets, toy lines, t-shirts, and Happy Meals connected to female superheroes that will be sold over the coming year, the question still remains: why has it taken so long for women to achieve such attention on screen? Not everyone wants women to be heroes. The sexism that fills some corners of film fandom saw many troll the internet in hopes of sabotaging Captain Marvel's opening weekend box office last year. Hollywood has a long history of denying, downgrading, and ignoring women's voices. By my count, there have been over 110 American movies based on comics since the year 2000, but only 6 of them directed by women. It's a critical moment for Hollywood in 2020. We'll either see women as powerful protectors on screen for years to come if audiences embrace these blockbusters, or we'll go back to business as usual with the usual roster of He-Man heroes. Either my 7-year-old daughter will grow up in an era where she can imagine herself as a superhero, or she won't. My greatest hope is that moment will mean more than just a condescending "good for you, ladies" pat on the back. 2020 can't just be a blip in reaction to the hashtag #MeToo movement. It needs to be the start of an acknowledgement among filmgoers that what we spend our money on determines who gets to be a hero and who doesn't, and that consumers contribute to the decisions made by Hollywood producers. If we want to build a culture in which our sons and daughters no longer ask why more women don't direct films and win Oscars for doing so, let's start by showing Hollywood that a year-long slate of female-led blockbusters can be profitable as well as powerful. Whether you're a comic book movie fan or not, I urge you to go see these movies. If the young women in your life grow up to ask why there weren't more movies made about heroic heroines when they were kids, what will your answer be? Because I didn't bother to buy a ticket when I had the chance?